How do you know that you've just received one of the finest Canadian-made tube amps that are out there? Well, they send you these amazing toques to keep your head nice and warm. In the cold Canadian weather, it's April up here, and yeah, you know what? I probably still could get some use out of this. Hey everybody, I wanted to do a video about an amp that I just finally got. I've been waiting for a while from the fine folks at Revv Amplification, and this is the Revv Generator 100R Mark III amplifier. And I have to say, I really can't say too many bad things about this amp. It's incredible. I literally received it, I think yesterday or the day before. I didn't have a chance to unbox it right away. Got it out this morning. Gave it a very quick run through just to sort of get my head around how everything was working. And I'm just blown away with it, and I want to give you kind of my first impressions of it, walk you through some of the features, some of the incredible features that are on it, and give you some sounds of what this is capable of. And there's a lot to it. I truly believe that the folks of Revv may have made the perfect guitar amp head, not only the tone aspect of it, but also the feature set is pretty much second to none, and I think their competition is going to have a lot to live up to. So first, let's take a look at the front and back panel settings. And for that, I'm just going to go over to the manual. I have a camera set up here on the Revv Generator 100R. Now you're getting the shine back off my head. I took the toque off. I didn't want to be sweating through the video. And I'm going to show you what the front panel controls do after with some tones. I'm going to have some timestamps down below. This may be a long video because there's so much to unpack here. But I figure just for looking at what the controls are, we can take a look at the manual and see what the folks at Revv have to say about it so we understand what all the controls are doing. Now, before we do that, there are basically three amps in this series. There's the 100R, which I have, and which this review is going to be about, the 100P, and there's the 120, and these are all part of the new Mark III series of amps. Now, the difference, you might ask, the 120 is the full-blown 4-channel version of the amp. We're going to have their blue channel, their green channel, their purple channel, and their red channel. Now, for those who don't maybe need all 4 channels, the folks at Revv have made a really good move, I think, and they've made a 100R and a 100P. The 100P is a 3-channel amp, as is the 100R. The difference is the 100P has only the purple channel, not the red, and the 100R has no purple channel, but the red channel. So each of those has the blue, the green, the R has the red, and the P version has blue, green, and the purple channel. So really well thought out. So I decided to go with the 100R as I really didn't feel like I needed a 4-channel version of the amp. Not to say that it isn't amazing, but you are going to pay a little more for that amp. So let's go over and take a look at the manual here, and we'll take a look at the front panel. So first things first, if we move from left to right, we have very simply an input where we're going to plug our guitar in. Then we have 3 separate channel sections, as you can see here. Each of the channel sections has its own independent 3-band EQ, or 3-band tone stack we can call it, bass, middle, and treble. These are very sensitive controls and work beautifully. You can really use these to dial in the tones quite nicely. We have a channel 1 button. We have a store button, which is going to be used to store various parameters having to do with MIDI and your cab settings and whatnot, because this also runs beautifully with the Torpedo remote software, where we can capture whole kind of signal chains within that. Channel 1 also has a wide switch, which by pressing the channel 1 button, we can turn it on and off. So the channel 1 button not only selects channel 1, but it can also toggle between wide and the non-wide setting. Level is simply the volume control for that channel. As we move to channel 2, we see a bright switch down here. Now, the bright switch is shared between channel 1 and channel 2, so we can use it on both. And like it states, it just makes the sound a little more bright and cutting. On the second channel, again, by pressing channel 2, we're going to select the channel. But also, if we look down here, it says the crunch drive mode is cycled by pressing the channel button. As you press the channel button, you'll see the drive LED change from off to blue to red. Each drive mode will alter the gain of the channel as well as increase or decrease the intensity of certain frequencies. So even within the drive channel here, we have 3 different gain modes, which have really interesting sounds. And I will get to some sound examples very shortly. So we have a gain control, which is going to be the overall amount of gain we get out of that channel, and the level, which is going to be sort of the volume for that channel. As we move to channel 3, we have gain level, we still have our treble, middle, bass, but we also have a separate bright switch, a cut switch, and a fat switch, and 3 aggression modes. So if we come down and take a look at what those do, The aggression has 3 levels. Least saturation is green, tight saturation is blue, and highest, fattest saturation is red. These aggression levels are highly interactive with the gain knob and can result in everything from broken up rock tones to metal rhythm tones and lead tones. Very, very interesting stuff. Then we have the bright, cut, and fat. The bright, cut, and fat extend the highs, mids, and lows. These boosts can be powerful when looking for certain sounds as they interact so well with the channel's EQ. The fat control will allow you to either run a tight low end or a dramatically loosening it up depending on what you need. Cut boosts mid frequencies, and bright boosts treble to enhance your overall presence live or in the studio. As we move on, we have a master section with 2 independent masters. Now, one thing that the Revv amps come with is an amazing foot switch right here, as you'll see. And you'll notice we have the ability to change between channels 1, 2, and 3, and to toggle between the 2 masters. So if we wanted to, say, have a little boost in volume for leads, we could set our master to a little bit louder, and anytime we need to do that, we just press the master control. Really well thought out, built-in boost control for us. So we can set those however we need for ourselves. They also give a beautiful long cable, and it is really long, which is one of my pet peeves with a lot of amp companies who kind of send you these little short cables for foot switches that aren't going to be very useful. The foot switch also allows us to foot switch in the effects loop in or out, and an overall mute switch, which is great too in between songs if we want to turn that on or off. We also have a presence and depth control in the master section. So if we come down, it says the presence control has a great range of use. This control can be very powerful in brightening up the amp and adding amazing cut. The depth control is a bass control and will add some incredible low end to the output. Using the control sparingly is recommended to keep the bass response tight, as higher settings will give you a loose low end. Now, I figured I would just read these from the manual to make sure that we're describing it right. And so many folks ask me questions, a lot of times the answer is right in the manual. So let's go there. I want to make sure you guys are getting the right information. We also have a reverb and a gate built in. The reverb on the amplifier is toggled on and off with the reverb switch. When the LED is illuminated, reverb is inserted into the guitar signal. The reverb level control on the rear of the amplifier is then set according to the amount of reverb desired. Each channel on the amplifier can be set differently from each other to include reverb or not. And as I mentioned, the 100R also has a really high quality gate built in. The gate control is also on the back panel, which we'll see in just a moment. And we can turn that on or off from this button here. We have a headphone jack, which is really interesting. This is going to be a headphone jack from the built-in Torpedo remote impulse response library that's built into this. So we're going to be getting a mic'd record ready signal. So if you want to practice with this amp, you can simply plug a set of headphones into it and have studio ready sounds in your headphones. Really brilliant. This hybrid type of amp is a really incredible design, and the folks at Revv have really thought this out in a really beautiful manner. One thing to keep in mind, I am running this right now with no speaker attached to it. It has an internal load in it. You can toggle it on and off, but regardless of the setting, you're not going to do any damage to the amp. The only time that I believe you will is if you have a speaker cable plugged into one of the speaker outputs on the Revv amp, and it's not plugged into a speaker cabinet, and you have it set with the setting on the back to actually be engaged with the speaker cabinet, then you will have some problems from what I understand. Other than that though, if there's no speaker cable plugged in, it's going to sense whether there's a speaker there and either use the internal load or the speaker. So really well thought out again. The pre-post button is very interesting, and let's scroll down and read what they have to say about that. It says, because the 2-Notes technology inside can also provide digital power amp tone, you now have the ability to choose different tube types like EL34s or 6L6s as your virtual power amp sound. So that's only going to affect the outputs on the back that feed from the Torpedo software. To take advantage of this ability, we added the pre-post switch. This momentary push button will give the 2-Notes technology inside either an input signal from the preamp or the power amp. If the input signal comes from the preamp, then the real tube power amp won't color the sound, and the digital tube types can be used from the 2-Notes tech in all their tone glory. So once we go over to the 2-Notes remote software, we're going to see we can choose different power amp tubes. So if you don't want the coloration of the power amp tubes from the Revv amp, you simply change that over to pre, and all you're going to get are the preamp tubes before the power amp tubes. So really well thought out again. We also have a level control, which is going to control the Torpedo outputs heading into an audio interface or a mixing console, so we have an independent level there so we don't overload the channel or just when we need to adjust it accordingly. So really well thought out. The virtual cab section is going to be where we can store 6 of our little signal chains from our Torpedo software, which I'll show you in just a moment, and we can store them to each of those 6 so we don't have to hook up the 100R and then tweak things all the time. We can just store them to those settings and click easily between them. This is one of my favorite features, is the Bluetooth setting on this. So I seamlessly paired this up with my Revv Generator R, and you simply put in the last 6 digits of your Revv Amp serial number, you hit OK, you'll see here that it connects via Bluetooth with your amp, and you can move settings around, you can change things however you want, and even if I go to the front of the amp and switch to these different virtual settings, you'll see they'll switch right here on my phone, which is incredible. We can change reverb, EQ, so on and so forth, tons of settings there. I think that may be one of my favorite features on the amp. Instead of always having to get the USB cable out, plug it in, you can just sit there with your phone and tweak the tones as you're going. Very simple, really, really smart move. On the front panel, finishes off with an on-off and a standby switch. Let's head over to the back panel. Well, what we have here, we have our main AC power cord. We have our fuses. We're not really going to get into this. We have our bias controls. Again, that's beyond the scope of this video to talk about. The manual is a really well-written manual though. Here we have our Torpedo outputs, which I was talking about. These are balanced outputs and they're stereo outputs, so we can take advantage of the Torpedo remote software in stereo, which is wonderful. We could pan the mics around, we could do all sorts of things. And I mean, this is so flexible in the studio. This is going to be one of the best studio amps I think available to anybody. We have a ground lift to go along with that. We do have a USB cable to plug it into our computer. Now, this is not transferring any audio. This is not a recording interface. This is just to hook it up to the Torpedo remote software. We have the ability to switch between 120 watts and 10 watts, which is really brilliant. If you're just playing at home and you don't need all that extra output, we can just push this down to 10 watts. And that's a great feature to have. There was what I was talking about, the internal load versus the speaker load. As I was mentioning, if you're set to speaker and you don't have a speaker hooked up with no cable plugged into your speaker outputs, you're okay. The generator amp is going to recognize that and it's going to switch to the internal load. But probably always safe if there's a cable plugged in to have it set to internal load. We also have our reverb level and we have our gate threshold. We have an effects loop. We have all of our speaker outputs with their various ohm settings. And we have our cab lighting. If we're using a Revv cab, we connect the cab lighting cable and we get the illumination of the Revv cab. Really beautiful stuff. There's our foot switch input. Like I mentioned, nice long cord. And we have our MIDI through and MIDI in. Sorry for the long-winded intro, but I just wanted to make sure we understood what this was capable of and how amazing an amp it is. But let's dive in and take a look now. So what I was mentioning to you before is the little virtual cabinet switch on the front of the amp. So here's the stock settings that come up with that. For number 1, it comes up with a Revv 412 closed back V1 cabinet, and it's mic'd with a Shure SM57 and a Royer R121 ribbon mic. We can turn our reverb on and off. We can have an enhancer, EQ. I've done a video with the Revv G20 where I went in depth with the Torpedo remote software. I'm not going to do that here. We kind of understand what this is and we'll run through some sounds just with the stock settings. If I switch to number 2 on the virtual cabinet, you'll notice that the microphones move off axis a little bit. It's the same cab, but we get a little bit of a different sound by that mic moving off axis. If I keep going, now we change to a 212 closed back Revv cabinet with a condenser, an 87 condenser and an R121 ribbon mic. If I keep going, we get to the Revv 112 cabinet with an ET90 warehouse guitar speaker. This is the cab I have and it's a great sounding cab. If I keep going, we go to a Revv 412 closed back cab with a Shure SM57 and a Royer R121. And if we go to the last setting, we have a 412 closed back cabinet with reverb on it now, and in this case it's a plate reverb with a Shure SM57 and a R121 ribbon. I'm not going to touch those. We can tweak this all day long, save our own settings, recall them, save them to the virtual cabinets. That's up to you. But I want to take a look and see how these tones sound with just the stock settings that come with it. So without further ado, let's listen to how the Revv Generator 100R actually sounds. So for the clean channel, I've grabbed my Vigier Expert guitar, nice Strat style guitar, actually one of my favorite all-time Strat style guitars. And we'll take a look over at the actual amp settings. Now you can see I'm on channel 1. My hand may get in the way. I'm gonna do my best here. It's a little bit tight quarters here, and I hope you can see everything clearly. But if you see here, I have channel 1 engaged. If I press that again, the wide light comes on. But we're just gonna zero these off to 12. We'll get our volume level up around halfway and hear what this sounds like. I'm on the bridge pickup right now. Now obviously that has no reverb on. I'm gonna come over and I'm gonna press the reverb button on. That adds a really nice depth to the sound. Now, if I go to the neck pickup, middle position, all right, let's see what some of the controls do now. If I switch over to the wide setting, just kind of boosts all the frequencies a little bit. Very nice stuff. Now, if we go over to the treble control and crank that up, bring it all the way down. So as we can see, very responsive controls. Let's see what the mids do. And the bass control all the way down. And all the way up. Very nice stuff. Now what happens if we crank this up? I don't want to get any clipping in my DAW. Now let's add the bright switch in there. So we can really see, I'm going to bring that level back a bit, take the bright off, a real vast array of tones just within that one channel. Now what happens if I switch cabs? And back to the original. Beautiful stuff. I think you can see that there are a lot of tones here. Let's move over to channel 2. Now, if I keep pressing channel 2, you'll see that I toggle through the drive setting being off to blue to red. So let's start with the gain halfway up and all our controls at middle. It's a little bit quieter. Let me give some more level there. Let's crank that gain up, see what we have. I'm going to hit the drive to go to the blue setting. And we'll move to the red. Really nice stuff. What you'll notice too is as I move through the channels, the front panel goes from blue channel, green channel, red channel. So really interesting stuff. Let's try this channel with some humbuckers. So now I've got my Vigier Excalibur guitar. Now let's go through the different modes here again. And back to the original. Now the gain range on this quite vast. So really nice stuff. The EQ control really brightens it up or darkens it up with that treble. So we can really see the tone stack on each of these channels really allows us to tweak these sounds in a very wide array of different tones. Bright switch on. Nice stuff. Let's move on to the red channel. So as we mentioned before, the red channel has 3 aggression settings. If I keep pressing it, I go from the light being off to blue to red. We also have a bright, cut, and fat switch. So let's just see with everything kind of set like this. Now I have the reverb on. If I turn that off, let's see what turning the gate off does. So we hear that noise. Takes that noise away, as it should. That's awesome. Really cool stuff. So with that, let's see what the bright switch does. So a little bit more cut. Let's see what the cut switch does. And let's see what the fat switch does. Nice stuff. Treble. Mids. And our bass control all the way up. So I think we can see that they work exactly as advertised and give us a lot of control over shaping our tones. Let's go up with the gain all the way and see what we get. Go through the aggression settings. Let's put some reverb on that. Lots of possibilities here. Let's see what taking that tone, maybe a little bit less gain, and going through our different virtual cab settings will do. So I think we can see there is a lot of power under the hood here. Lots of tones. Everything from beautiful cleans to edge of breakup tones, to crunch tones, to rock tones, to metal tones. It's all in here. And then add the Torpedo remote ability to be able to tweak those sounds, send it to front of house, send it to the recording console, all while feeding it through a real guitar cab. The options really are endless, and that's why I feel the folks at Revv have really knocked it out of the park with this, and probably made, in my opinion, one of the finest, most versatile amps, not just for tones, but for ease of use and covering just about any situation that we might need. So even having one of these without a cab would be worth it in the studio if you like the sounds that you're hearing here. So I hope I covered everything, and I hope I didn't go on too long. I noodled a lot, I know, probably messed up some licks and some notes in there, but I like to keep these things real and give my first impressions of things. And like I said, I only listened to this very briefly right before doing the video for maybe 15-20 minutes. I noodled around on it, and right away I was just blown away by it. And that was actually through my Revv 112 cab on the 10-watt setting, and I just my mind is blown with this amp. It's a really, really great amp, and I can't wait to dive in a little more and do some more demos with it. I'll probably do something with it in a mix, and even miking it up and hearing what it sounds like. Although with the Torpedo remote software, I don't know if you'll ever really feel the need to go mic it up, because it seems to do everything we need it to do and get some great tones with all the flexibility of changing out power tubes and moving the mics around in a room, changing cabs, changing microphones. Possibilities are endless. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. If I did miss anything, I apologize, but read the manual. The manual is a great resource. The folks at Revv really did a great job putting it together. And don't forget to keep your head and your ears warm with the wonderful toque that you get with it. If everybody gets it, I don't know. It was in mine, so I don't know. Maybe they know that my head needs a little extra warming. So anyways, thank you guys so much. Please like the video, share it with anybody who you think would enjoy watching it or get some use out of it. Go give my friends at Revv a look at what their line of amps are. Maybe there's something in there that would work wonderfully for you. Their lunchbox amps are amazing too. The D20 and G20, knocked it out of the park with those as well. So thank you guys so much. Please subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out, and I'll be back really soon with some more. Thanks again, guys. Ciao for now.